Revisiting Turkey's Role in the 2020 Nagorno-Karabakh War. Article by Hovhannes Nazaretyan, published on November 8, 2024, on EVN Report. After Erdogan boasted in July that Turkey could invade Israel, just like we entered Karabakh, Baku responded quietly, with state-affiliated media quoting a senior defense ministry official denying any involvement of foreign servicemen in the 2020 war. But all accounts point to Turkey's heavy involvement in the 44-day war. It marked Ankara's first substantial, albeit largely covert, intervention in the three-decade-long conflict. While many analysts have explored its geopolitical dimensions, this piece focuses on the military aspect of Turkey's intervention. While the full extent of Turkey's role remains unclear, the available evidence paints a clearer picture of Ankara's substantial support for Baku's war effort. To the best of our knowledge, Turkey's involvement included the recruitment and transfer of Syrian mercenaries, the deployment and likely limited use of its F-16 fighter jets, the provision and operation of armed Bayraktar TB2 drones, advisory support and intelligence sharing, and even command at the highest level. The path to war. During the brief flare-up of tensions on the Armenia-Azerbaijan border in mid-July 2020, the most serious escalation in years, Turkey expressed strong support for Baku, with Turkish Defense Minister Hulusi Akar warning that Armenia will be left under the trouble they started and will certainly pay for what they have done. Shortly thereafter, Turkey and Azerbaijan announced large-scale joint exercises to run from July 29 to August 10. However, these were later extended. Additional ground and air force exercises were held in Nakhichevan from September 5 to 7, involving more than 5,000 personnel and a vast amount of equipment. Meanwhile, the first reports of Syrian mercenaries being recruited by Turkey for deployment in Azerbaijan began circulating in mid to late July, becoming increasingly more frequent in the weeks leading up to the Azerbaijani offensive against Nagorno-Karabakh on September 27. This is covered in the lengthy chronicle published last year. A wartime report revealed that Turkish arms sales to Azerbaijan surged six-fold in the first 9 months of 2020, reaching $123 million, with the total for the 11 months rising to $256 million. Advisory and operational support. During the war, Pashinyan claimed that 150 high-ranking Turkish officers were directing military operations on behalf of Azerbaijan, with several thousand Turkish Special Forces personnel deployed on the battlefield. In contrast, Aliyev claimed that not a single person from Turkey participates in this war, adding, "Turkish equipment yes, Turkish forces no." He spoke of Ankara's diplomatic and moral support. But observers quickly recognized the overt and evident support from Ankara. Military analyst Rob Lee, who closely monitored the war, argued that the Turkish support was the variable explaining Azerbaijan's greater success in the fall of 2020 than in July 2020 and April 2016. He suggested that it likely encompassed intelligence gathering and sharing, assistance with targeting, including planning and coordinating fire, and command and control functions, where Turkish advisors and liaisons played a key role, with Azerbaijanis doing the fighting. Even more than a year after the war ended, Lee noted that the full extent of the Turkish involvement remained unknown. Turkish advisory and operational support has been widely acknowledged, while war correspondent Simon Ostrovsky said Turkey's experienced advisors directed Baku's war machine. Edward J. Erickson, a retired U.S. Army officer sympathetic to Turkey, opined that it is very likely that the Azerbaijani General Staff received advice in real time from the Turks. A 2022 article in the reputable journal International Security pointed to Turkey's extensive support from intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, ISR, to the provision of drones, electronic warfare units, aircraft for target acquisition, long-range artillery, skilled Turkish troops that operated these platforms. In the 2021 book Storm in the Caucasus, Russian analysts Konstantin Makienko and Ruslan Pukov described Turkey's direct military intervention as the first by an external military power in the post-Soviet space. Makienko suggested that Turkey's involvement was very significant, even decisive, and that there is strong reason to believe that Turkish advisors were present in combat formations at the battalion level and higher, and in some cases even at the company level. A victory parade was held in Baku on December 10th, 1 month after the war ended, with Erdogan standing next to Aliyev as Turkish soldiers and officers marched and Turkey's national anthem played. A year after the war ended, Erdogan's vice president Fuat Oktay told parliament in no uncertain terms that Turkey's National Intelligence Organization, MIT, had conducted significant operations in Nagorno-Karabakh, among other places. Oktay stated that Turkey had achieved many successes, including ending the 30-year occupation in Nagorno-Karabakh. The most detailed report on Turkish involvement emerged mid-war from the Russian daily Kommersant, which cited its military diplomatic sources, understood to be the GRU, Russia's foreign military intelligence agency. It asserted that the war was planned and provoked by Turkey, with Ankara promising comprehensive political, diplomatic, intelligence, and military technical support. Remarkably, it claimed that Turkey's defense minister Hulusi Akar and land forces commander Umit Dündar were in Azerbaijan from September 28 to 30 to oversee the general conduct of operations on the front. Kommersant reported that, following joint exercises in July and August, a total of 600 Turkish military personnel remained in Azerbaijan to coordinate the planning and execution of the offensive. This contingent included 200 troops in a battalion tactical group, 50 instructors in Nakhchivan, 90 advisors in Baku, 120 air and technical personnel at the Gabala Air Base, 20 drone operators at the Dalir Airfield, 50 instructors at the Yevlak Airfield, 50 instructors in the 4th Army Corps, based near Baku, and 20 personnel at the Navy base and the military academy in Baku. This Turkish contingent had in its possession 18 infantry fighting vehicles, a multiple rocket launcher, 10 vehicles, and up to 34 pieces of aviation equipment, including 6 planes, 8 helicopters, and up to 20 drones, to conduct military reconnaissance against Armenian forces. Bakhtiar Ersey. Immediately after the war, another Russian newspaper, Vzolayad, reported that around 200 Turkish military advisors were based in Azerbaijan and were involved in organizational and staff tasks. It identified Major General Bakhtiar Ersey, Chief of Operations of the Turkish Land Forces, as the military leader of the entire operation in Karabakh, while Lieutenant General Sherif Ongay, commander of the 3rd Army based in Erzincan, was involved in the planning of the offensive. Ersey reportedly took over as Azerbaijani military's chief of the general staff. Najmuddin Sadikov was sidelined. In a late October 2020 meeting at the Azerbaijani Operations Command Center, Ersey was one of the 3 officers reporting to Aliyev. In late August 2021, Ersey was appointed commander of the Azerbaijan Task Force Command under Turkey's general staff, which he continues to hold. A little over a year later, in December 2022, Ersey was revealed to have been appointed as advisor to Azerbaijan's defense minister Hasanov. At the time, Turan, an independent outlet, wrote that his special role in the planning of military operations of the 2020 war is no secret. F-16 fighter jets. Turkey first deployed F-16 fighter jets to Azerbaijan for the joint exercises in late July 2020, with at least 5 seen at the Ganja airport. 2 weeks before the war, 3 F-16s flew over Ganja to celebrate the 102nd anniversary of the liberation of Baku by Ottoman forces. As the jets remained there after the exercises, Yerevan raised the issue with the CSTO and 12 NATO partners. Armenian officials later reported that Turkey rotated the planes, along with their crews and technical staff, on September 23, which further raised alarm bells in Yerevan. Armenian intelligence intercepted communication between F-16 pilots on September 25, discussing their involvement in something important on Sunday, i.e. September 27, the first day of the war. Officials in Armenia and Artsakh insisted that F-16s were used from the first hours of the Azerbaijan offensive. On September 29, Armenia's defense ministry claimed that an Armenian Su-25, attempting to repel the combined Azerbaijani and Turkish attacks against Armenia, was shot down by a Turkish F-16 in Armenian airspace, resulting in the pilot's death. Azerbaijan and Turkey dismissed the claim. Aliyev called it fake news, claiming that the Su-25 hit a mountain because the pilot was inexperienced. Erdogan's senior advisor, Ibrahim Kalin, insisted that Turkey does not have any F-16s operating in the region, while Aliyev advisor Hikmet Hacıyev denied the presence of F-16s on Azerbaijani soil. But analysis of satellite imagery by the New York Times the same day revealed at least 2 F-16s stationed at Ganja Airport on October 3rd. 2 days later, Aliyev had to admit their presence, but claimed that the F-16s were on the ground and not flying and not in any way participating in combat. Aliyev later justified their presence as a sign of solidarity from Turkey. While the presence of F-16s in Ganja is not direct evidence of the Su-25 shootdown, questions arose as to why their deployment was kept secret. The American security analysis firm Stratfor suggested that it demonstrated Turkey's direct military involvement beyond its provision of mercenaries and hardware. Throughout the war, Armenia's defense ministry consistently reported that Turkish Air Force F-16s played an active combat role, particularly in providing cover for Azerbaijan's Soviet-era Su-25 jets and armed Bayraktar TB2 UAVs, as well as directly engaging in airstrikes. The Armenian MOD further claimed that joint operations were coordinated from a Turkish E-7T remote command center flying over eastern Turkish airspace. On October 15th, Garip Movsesyan, deputy commander of Armenia's air defense forces, insisted that Armenia has extensive evidence of F-16 use in combat, including coordinating Azerbaijan's air force operations, providing support during strikes, and offering operational cover. But the combat engagement of F-16s was not confirmed independently. The F-16s were later relocated farther away from the front line to the Gabala Air Base, where satellite images taken on October 19th showed 6 F-16s. Analysis by Razom.info suggested that the F-16s were subsequently moved ever farther, to Lankaran in southern Azerbaijan. In an October 26th address, Aliyev said that everyone knows that the 5 or 6 F-16s are on the ground in Azerbaijan, and that Turkish brothers left them in Azerbaijan for moral support. At the same time, he warned, if we are attacked from outside, they will see those F-16s. Turkish analyst Kerim Haas suggested that the jets saw limited and partial use, but argued that their mere physical presence in Azerbaijan pressured Yerevan psychologically and played a role in determining the outcome of the war. A year after the war ended, Rob Lee wrote that Turkey deployed F-16 fighters to defend Azerbaijani airspace during the war, without passing judgment on their combat use. Armenia's wartime defense minister Tanoyan told the Parliamentary Select Committee probing the war in 2023 that Armenian forces could have shot down the F-16s, but Russia had asked Armenia not to provoke the situation. Moscow did not respond to this. Bayraktar TB2 drones. The deployment of armed Bayraktar TB2 drones was perhaps the most discussed, though not necessarily the most important aspect of Turkey's support. These drones, numbering around a dozen, were apparently responsible for a substantial portion of Armenian equipment and personnel loss. Emil Sanamyan of the USC Institute of Armenian Studies noted that judging by video materials and eyewitness accounts, Turkish aerial attacks accounted for the majority of the Armenian manpower losses. The attention Bayraktar drones received was fueled by the numerous videos of strikes on Armenian targets, as Armenian forces struggled to effectively counter them. There is broad agreement among observers, including Rob Lee and Ruslan Pukov, that the drones were operated by Turkish crews. This conclusion is based on the brief period between Azerbaijan's acquisition of the drones and the war's outbreak, which did not allow sufficient time to properly train Azerbaijani personnel. Edward J. Erickson suggested that Azerbaijan may have hired Bayraktar Company's civilian pilots and experts to lead its drone effort. A 2022 report by the Center for Strategic and International Studies, CSIS, concluded that available evidence suggests it is likely that the TB2s used in the 2020 war were owned by Azerbaijan but operated by Turkish airmen and crews. Lee also noted that a Turkish MOD-affiliated account named Clash Report posted a video of a TB2 strike before it was shared by Azerbaijan's MOD, suggesting Turkish control or coordination of the TB2s. It was also Yerevan's position that Turks operated the drones. Armenia's MOD claimed that a Turkish UAV command center was located across Hadrut. Additionally, the Kommersant report from mid-October suggested that 20 Turkish drone operators were stationed at the Dalyar airfield, which Armenia reportedly attempted to target with a missile strike on October 2nd. A post-war report by the Russian newspaper Vzglyad suggested that Turkish Air Force Major General Göksel Kaya oversaw the deployment of TB2s during the war. Kaya was spotted in meetings of Turkish and Azerbaijani officials in Baku as early as August 2020 and during the war. Earlier in 2019, Kaya had reportedly been involved in coordination of TB2 drones deployed in Libya. International acknowledgement. International actors generally acknowledge Turkey's involvement in addition to the numerous statements regarding the deployment of Syrian mercenaries, which will not be repeated here. Russia's Foreign Intelligence Chief Sergei Naryshkin stated on October 6 that, for the first time, Turkey has openly and unequivocally sided with Azerbaijan, but did not provide any details aside from the mercenaries. U.S. State Secretary Mike Pompeo stated in mid-October that Turkey has begun to reinforce Azerbaijan and has provided resources to Baku. Trump's National Security Advisor, Robert O'Brien, mentioned Turkish technical assistance and advisory support to Azerbaijan in a speech on October 30th. In a campaign statement, former Vice President Joe Biden, Trump's opponent in the presidential race, said Turkey has provided arms to Azerbaijan. France's Foreign Minister Jean-Yves Le Drian told the French Parliament on October 7th that the new aspect of the conflict is that there is military involvement by Turkey. In December 2020, EU's top diplomat Josep Borrell wrote that Turkey's support has resulted in a major victory for Azerbaijan. On the other hand, when asked about Turkey's role in the conflict, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg responded that the alliance is not part of the conflict in and around Nagorno-Karabakh, and that Turkey is a valued ally, a message he had conveyed to Armenian President Armen Sarkisian.